Thanks. Afternoon, everyone. My name's Tony Maguire and I'm the Regional Director here for D12 here in Australia, New Zealand, Melbourne-based at the moment. You're in for a real treat today. We've got three experts in the field, David Allabon, Steve Fouracre and Josh DeGruff. All of them are either within schools. Now we've got Steve, who's the Deputy Principal at Wodonga Middle Years, David Allabon, recently retired principal, who has been doing a truckload of work over the last 20 years in the education space, most recently principal, and Josh, who is powering up all of the experiences for teachers within Wodonga Middle Years School. The fact that we're in lockdown is probably even more timely here in Victoria and New South Wales. As we go into lockdown, we find ourselves confronted with additional burdens in terms of working with our students, ensuring that they're comfortable, that they have the right kinds of communication structures in place. Parents, as they're now homeschooling, need additional support, having those communication channels in place that support them as well. Teachers need the best ways in which they can work with those other students and parent groups in ways which really supports the whole learning and teaching process effectively. Today, you've got access to David, Stephen and Josh, who are doing some really incredible work at Wodonga Middle Years in terms of how they're building out parent feedback loops and providing really authentic feedback in ways which improves the reporting process, simplifies the job for teachers, and really lowers the stress for parents and for, most importantly, students. I'm going to hand across to David. Dave, over to you, my friend.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for your kind words. So today we are going to look at a range of different things, but I guess you touched on it right at the very start. So how has teaching and learning changed since the beginning of COVID? I think we're all aware of that, but what's it look like for the schools we're working with? So I might hand over to you, Steve, first to have a bit of a conversation about that.
I'll quickly talk about where we've come from. 2006, the Wodonga Middle Years College began. It was a regeneration of schools in Wodonga, especially of secondary education. And, you know, we were at a point in 2016 where we'd moved past the 2 and 4 ring binder storage method for curriculum. We had a staff common drive that was extremely difficult that I know a lot of schools still manage a lot of their curriculum on, and we introduced the platform Brightspace as a learning management system as a way forward, and it was an extremely popular implementation at Wodonga Middle Years. And here we are 6 years later down the track, where we're probably engaging more of our kids and parent and school community through our learning management system than we ever have before. And I'll probably let Josh talk about you know, what teaching and learning looks like now at Wodonga Middle Years College.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. The big change, as you just alluded to, really was because I joined the school as a graduate teacher right on the cusp of that transition. So when I got in, the teachers that wanted to help me out handed me a big folder full of photocopies. Here you go, here's our program. Whereas today, everything is sitting on the Brightspace platform, and that's beyond just our teaching and learning strategies. Our wellbeing staff use the platform, our school nurse uses the platform, our office staff use the platform. Basically, we've got this whole school strategy. So if you think about the fundamentals of teaching and learning, what we do in the classroom itself has not changed. But the reality is we've got the ability to keep our students connected in a meaningful way all the time. Students sometimes miss time at school for legitimate reasons, and now they can stay connected when they need to. If they go away for a holiday with family, they can still check in with us for things like homework, just ability to stay in touch. So I think we were very privileged that for us as a school, by the time remote learning really kicked in Victoria, we knew what we were doing. It wasn't comfortable, it kind of couldn't be, but most of our teaching staff had the confidence that they knew that they could take what they were already doing through Brightspace to the students for learning from home And I'd say we transitioned quite smoothly into that style of teaching and learning.
And what's that impact has that had on them reporting? Because obviously one of the issues that a lot of schools are facing in remote learning is about how do you report to parents, how do you give feedback to students, etc.
Well, having that consistency through our Dropboxes, discussion spaces in particular, because our students were already using that space, they knew where to look. So a lot of the time what we've found is that our students are increasingly connected to their feedback. We've made some changes to increase that yet again this year as part of the systems we use at the school. But through Brightspace, what we do hasn't actually had to change. It's more our methodology as teachers. So I'd say our students are more connected to feedback than they were when I first started out at the school, certainly. And that's increasing week by week.
Great, thank you. So you're saying Brightspace has really engaged students and in their learning. Is there anything that they've, any other benefits you've seen from using Brightspace with students, and particularly in terms of how they provide feedback, etc.?
Yeah, when you look at involving students in their education, what you're really looking for is that continuity in the flow of the program. And like Josh said, we've had that ability to make that transition quite quickly from a remote, like from a face-to-face teaching, and pick up the next day. A lot of other schools have needed that extra day's planning when required. And that's fair enough, because I don't expect all schools, especially in a primary setting, to be working off an LMS. But from a secondary perspective, even as quickly as the lockdown that was sort of thrown upon us last Thursday, we were ready to go for our next session first thing Friday morning. So I suppose when you're looking at the greatest challenge for any secondary teacher, it's that entry point of learning for kids in a classroom. You always have such a diverse group of students and range of learners in any classroom. And a real challenge in teaching today is trying to, you can't just pitch it at the middle group. You need to try and differentiate your content. And over a period of time, we've had the ability to, like, you want your accessibility to be right for your students. We've been able to develop master courses that, have sort of 12 to 14 teachers working on one specific year level English course. So every kid's getting access to the same content, regardless of what classroom that they're in. So that kind of work, that when you have that many, I suppose, educators working on master courses, it allows for greater differentiation across what we're working on. That allows kids to have a little bit more awareness of where they're at, but also the opportunities for access and achieving growth, which is a real a focus of us at the Middle Years, is on achievement, but also the growth that we want to see from our learners.
And for the teachers, was it a great, I guess, having additional workload? And was it hard for them to get started using an LMS, particularly Brightspace?
Josh's, one of his key roles is the support from staff. So when I'll let Josh sort of talk specifically about how he goes about that. But I think when you want to implement any initiative or any program within your school, you can't implement anything that exceeds the capabilities of your teachers or your leaders, for that fact, that where you want to drive it in the school. So yeah, there's an element of a lot of professional learning that needed to happen. We're fortunate to have, I think, a very flexible and can-do attitude within our staff that needed this and wanted a platform like this to work from. But it requires a strong direction and vision to be able to implement that, and we needed a strong buy-in. And again, when we're looking at consistency, that's where someone like Josh comes in and offers the additional professional learning. And Josh, have you got a few examples or case studies where you've had to provide that support for staff?
It wasn't really me having to sit down with anyone, because as Steve was just saying, we have what we refer to as our power users. We've got a certain amount of teachers that as soon as they get the hang of something new in the platform, they say, what else have you got? What else can you do? Or better yet, they say, I've got a student that's operating at this level. How do we give them what they need? it has been actually quite fun within, say, English and humanities to be building advanced and extension modules of work for students, setting them up with their own groups online, giving them access to work that's at extension level. And very often what we've found is that once we're very comfortable with a unit of work as it's been designed by the larger group of teachers, our power users tend to say, but here's what more we can achieve. I don't have to write that unit again. It's just sitting there perpetually on the platform ready to go. I want to get creative. I want to see what else I can add to what we've already got. So we've got a couple of dozen teachers that are forging new pathways all the time. So while the learning curve is definitely there, we really have found that our power users lift absolutely everybody all at the same time. And you don't actually get that many teachers saying, I think this is all a bit too much, because every time they get a new idea under their belt, it connects them to a whole new world for teaching and learning that they want to engage with.
What about new teachers, Josh?
That's where the learning curve is admittedly steeper, because our staff that have been familiar with the platform for a few years, they've got everything covered. For our brand new staff, what we've actually found is we use the platform to teach the platform. We've got a staff induction course built in that new staff members are attached to. It's got walkthroughs for beginner users. We've got intermediate levels built in through the platform as well to show them how they can start to create their own content instead of just using what's already there. We've got advanced modules of work to show them how they can build separate groups for their own classes. And what I've found is that a lot of our graduate teachers in particular have come to us having used online LMSs, including Brightspace, at their own universities. That was my own experience. I was a Deakin graduate. I was quite familiar with the platform coming to the school. So this really is the way teaching and learning is already happening at university level. Our younger teachers are coming to us already familiar with what to do and ready to create.
I think one of the biggest anxieties for any graduate teachers is, I suppose, the amount of planning, preparation and assessment that they may need to do early. And if they're teaching outside of their content area, that additional pressure of, I suppose, you've been given 5 or 6 new classes that you're going to have to plan for. When they come in for inductions and we can show them that these master courses that we've got built, we want teachers to, put their own creative spin on it. We often get the feedback that reduces a lot of the, I think, pressure or the unknown in terms of how much planning is going to be required, so they can specifically focus on, I suppose, the needs of the kids and, accessing those entry points. So we get a lot of, really good feedback around how our courses are set up. And I suppose the reduction in workload that probably, was there prior to us using Brightspace.
And how do parents play to this vision of the future?
Well, we've got the Brightspace for Parents portal active for many of our classes at the moment, but not quite the whole school's on board yet. Basically, what we've really wanted, because parents play such a key role in how teaching and learning occurs, we wanted feedback from the parents to get an idea of what they were finding valuable within the platform, what they wanted to see. All the feedback we've had so far is it's designed the way they would have wanted it. So they get to see the daily posts under remote learning. Every teacher is putting in the activity feed. Hey class, here's what we're doing today. It's instructions, it's links to material, it's the friendly greetings and the social connections, everything you'd want. And the parents get to see that communication occurring through the activity feed for what's going on all day. They get to see the feedback on the assessments. They get to see the upcoming work, the overdue work for the students that are lagging behind a little bit, but they're working with the teachers. They can see the communication occurring through the platform. So the feedback we've had so far is extremely positive. It's just about getting the whole school connected to it now, which is pretty normal as you start to make major changes to how you use a platform.
Great, thank you. Any other comments, Steve, about parents and parent engagement?
Yeah, the parent engagement, it's a big one now. We feel like we've got the platform, and what we need to do as educators in a really good space, and that's taken a lot of refinement over time, and also I suppose the developments that happen in conjunction with Brightspace and their releases that they continually bring forward. And we think, I suppose, adolescents go through, and it's an interesting dynamic to watch unfold, that kids are quite forthcoming with information during their formative years in primary schools, and parents are heavily involved with what's happening in their child's education. And then there's this natural progression into adolescence where they're probably a bit more reserved with what's happening in school. They're going through that developmental phase where they're working out their own identity and probably keeping their parents at a nice, safe arm's length away. So parents want to be involved in their, teenagers and their child's education. And we feel that, the Brightspace of Parents platform is going to really leverage that partnership between the school and their child. And we know that when that partnership's strong, it improves the outcomes for that kid.
Right. Any advice for schools that are looking to LMS and moving forward in that direction, and just putting their toe in the water?
Let you go, Josh.
Sure. We've really found that for all of our core class content, the teachers really do know what they're doing. We know how we set things up in the classroom. Making the transition to setting things up on an LMS was far more pain-free than I think a lot of teachers assumed up front. And just the ability to have teachers instantly be able to share around their best case scenarios for student outcomes, their best methods for the teaching and learning content. Our more reluctant teachers got on board pretty quickly, and even our learning areas, you can understand why, such as technology, woodwork, metalwork. They might look at a platform and say, but that's not really what we do in the classroom. Is this relevant to us? Pretty quickly, they find that being able to keep the instruction sets for everything they do in their classrooms in one central shared location, even just the fact that we operate across 2 campuses, we can move in the same direction from opposite sides of town. And that's extremely handy. So our most reluctant learning areas and teachers jumped on board very quickly because they saw the value in being able to work together.
Great, thank you. So I think that was all the formal part of what we had to discuss, and we asked that. Thank you, both Josh and Steve, for your insights into that. Is there anybody have any questions? We've got a few minutes for questions, so we'd love to answer any questions you may have that to support you and in what you're trying to plan and moving forward.
Yeah, David, looks like we do have one question in the chat from Justin. It just says, do you find that the amount of transparency creates any issues between parents and teachers?
Great question.
I'll go first.
Yeah, you go, and then I'll finish. Yep.
Yeah, I haven't had any issues so far on that front because the parents that are highly connected really have found that it helps them to learn how to communicate with teachers, and they're usually getting consistent messaging and consistent feedback from all the teachers across the different learning areas. So very often where parents might otherwise be unsure how to approach one teacher or multiple teachers over a topic, we've found that having that consistent platform so far has actually led to a stronger team, a feeling that you've got a team for every student at the school.
I was going to make one point also. I think with Brightspace, it's not an all or nothing in terms of relationship with parents and giving feedback to parents. The teachers can decide what content they want and what resources and information they want to give to parents, can't they? So that it can be a school-based decision or individual decision as to what you want to share.
Yeah, at the moment, it's our summative assessments in particular, and I believe some of the formative assessments in the middle But because we're fairly consistent in what we are choosing to share as a school, the parents know what to expect when they see the feedback, when they see the communication.
What are the next steps for you guys? You've talked about where you are, where you've come from. Have you got any more plans, or if you sort of think you're almost there in terms of the way you want it to work?
Yeah, for obviously our parent engagement is a #1 priority, and we're really looking forward to working with that because it changes the conversation, and it's a tool that supports parents to not just ask the how was school today, that standard question that kind of gets sometimes met with a good or a grunt or a moan or it was okay. So we're supporting, I suppose that'll help parents open up a little bit more of a different dialogue at home with their kids, which is exciting, and the parent structure. But it's finally nice for us to get to a point where we're probably looking at refining our coursework, where with the platform's ability now and how we've sort of set rubrics up and grades, we've got a strong focus on now building learning goals with our students within units of work. We feel like we've got a fairly strong lesson structure, scope and sequence of learning in place. And, it's about how we do assessment and feedback now. When we look at what's going to have the biggest impacts on kids' outcomes, it's them knowing where they're at and them developing some level of agency in terms of where they want to go next. And we've got lots of work to do, but we're out of a phase now. We're going through that continually building content phase, which is we were in that for a while, even pre-D2L. So I think it's exciting for us to get to a point where we're really happy with our units of work, and now we're spending a lot more time looking at the quality of assessments and how they check in against the Victorian curriculum, and then building really high quality rubrics for kids to get that feedback and then identify where the next steps are in their learning.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, and I was just reflecting as you were talking about what it means as in a primary school setting. I'm being an ex-primary school principal, and I think that that to me is one of the key elements. We're always, even in primary schools, we have, similarly as you discussed, we have great parent engagement. In starting in prep in grade 1, but by the time you get to grade 6, it's sort of drifted away, and it's probably at the point where you start to see that that's your starting point. So I see having a learning management system that does provide that opportunity for feedback and reporting, I think would really enhance the schools that I've been working, the schools I've worked in, and would change the dialogue and the communication. And I think coming back to our starting point about COVID and remote learning, I think we have to be probably fully aware that's it's not going to be a one-off. We're going to be sort of in this environment probably ongoing for in the future as well, and we have to prepare for it and not just think, well, now we've got through it, this is the end of it, we'll go back to normal, because I think this is the new normal in a sense.
Yeah.
So I'm just aware of time. Any final comments or any feedback, or if we have any further questions from anybody?
Doesn't look like there's any more questions. Maybe we'll just give them a few seconds just to see if there's anything else someone wants to ask.
Yep, sure. No, we might leave it there then. Can I just thank both Josh and Steve on everyone's behalf for their time today and their insights into learning management systems, particularly continuous feedback and how we can adapt and change in the environment we're now in as we move forward. So I would thank you all for your time. Thanks for taking the time to listen to us, and thanks to the guys for give us their insights, and well done. And hopefully we might hear you speaking again, and maybe about some other areas of the curriculum, or the areas of learning management systems that we can impact and improve on. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Josh. Thank you, everyone.